people tend to remember that, that what you just said, that he consistently follows up, more than they remember the actual quality of the service. And that just has to do with, human psychology, right? Where we remember the emotions that we felt. We don't remember, the exact words or the exact conversation or the exact series of events. We remember how we felt.
All right, here we are, another episode, and we're going to be covering follow-up. So, Jody, take it away. What's the importance of follow-up?
Oh, geez, the pressure. Well, there's following up in a lot of different senses, right? But I think everybody's mind first goes to following up with leads, which is kind of seen as that most important, because you can easily lose somebody who could have been a really, really good client just because you didn't follow up. Mm-hmm. And so looking at it from that side of things, that's how people see the most importance in it. And, once again, we talked about organization in the last episode. It comes down to being organized and having a system in place to, make sure that you don't kind of ease up on those follow-ups and end up losing valuable clients.
Absolutely. And, rarely does the single follow-up work. I think the stats say it's usually like, between the 7th and 8th follow-up or touch point that a prospect will actually come back. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously not for everyone. You have, people where you can follow up once and they'll get back to you. But I think that the key thing that I've found that's been working lately is don't rely on one method of following up. So, if we get a prospect and we do a quote and send an email to them with the quote in it, if I was just relying on just emailing again to follow up and emailing again to follow up, right? If for some reason your email was in their spam, so are all those follow-ups, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll send the quote and then maybe I'll follow up by text. Or if I have them on Facebook, I'll then send a Facebook message, right? So there's multiple methods where you're doing a ton of follow-up and then suddenly you send a Facebook message, you get a reply right away. And they're like, oh, I didn't see that, right? Well, had you not done that, right, you still would have been either writing them off as a dead lead or spend the rest of your life just following up with this person that wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we all have different preferences when it comes to that. I mean, think about it in your personal life. If a company was to be contacting you, mm-hmm. I definitely know that I'd prefer a text message than an email or a phone call. But that's just one factor you have to consider. You also have to consider what's the level of vulnerability of, the service or the product that you're offering. And would somebody probably be more comfortable giving you that information or having a conversation with you about it over the phone? Sometimes it's even in-person follow-ups, mm-hmm. setting up some type of meeting so you can go over that and, reassure them or give them the answers to any questions that they have. But I'd say there's definitely a wide variety of factors you have to consider before you can kind of make a final decision on how you want to set your follow-up system and what you want that content to actually be.
Yeah, and your follow-up doesn't have to be only for leads or new prospects that are there. You've got your existing clients, so maybe you have a meeting with them over Zoom or over the phone, and you made some action items that you're going to do. It's a nice courtesy to follow up after and say, hey, I just wanted to send a follow-up after our call. These are the things I'm going to be working on. I'll have them to you by whatever date, right? Mm-hmm. That is, it's going to help you actually kind of verbalize and put them out. And it also really confirms with them that, what you're going to do. But you also have a record now that, if later you want to go back and what was it that I said I was going to do? Just look through your sent history and you've got it there.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of different options for follow-up.
Yeah. And I mean, I also kind of group that checking in mm-hmm. aspect with following up. If you haven't heard from a client in a while and it's, they're off, getting some type of content for you or, whatever it might be, trying to make a decision, just checking in with them and seeing how they're doing. If they have any questions, just that simple touch point and reaching out to them can feel, really good to make sure, you let them know that they have your support and anytime you need them or they need you, you're there. Mm-hmm. And, there's also following up after a client isn't even working with you anymore, making sure that you're doing that little thing to go above and beyond, providing them some type of value or just letting them know that you're there. And another thing is to really keep in mind that, don't just shove sales down their throat and, talk about, what it is you want the next step to be, or following up in the sense of, trying to sell them more. It's about giving them value and making sure that they feel appreciated as a customer.
Yeah. And I guess in my own, business life, somebody that stands out that's followed up with me constantly has been Chuck Hennessy, who is now with the Royal Bank in Kentville, who was previously with Scotiabank. I mean, he is an amazing person, not only just on the bank side, but as just a human being. And, he's always, from 10 years of doing business banking with him, has followed up consistently year over year for no sales-oriented reason. He just checks in. He's like, hey, just seeing how things are going, wishing you all the best. And if you need me, I'm here, right? So he's always top of mind. And no one else has ever done that. It's like, those friends that you have that you only hear about when they want something from you. There are businesses out there that the only time you hear from them is when they want to sell you something. And you don't want to be that person, right? You don't want to be that person that's showing love because you want something from them.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, depending on the company and your follow-up process, this can either be fortunate or unfortunate. But, people tend to remember that, that what you just said, that he consistently follows up, more than they remember the actual quality of the service. And that just has to do with, human psychology, right? Where we remember the emotions that we felt. We don't remember, the exact words or the exact conversation or the exact series of events. We remember how we felt. So that's really important to keep in mind when you're considering your follow-up system.
And one thing I want to go back to when you were talking about, checking in with clients is you have to consider, what they're experiencing. So let's say, you're a client, you're working with a marketing firm, and we'll use our example here. And you said, hey, can you get me this, or can you write this, or can you shoot this video? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. Then you get off that call and you're like, you start to do it and you struggle with it. And then you start to feel embarrassed. Like, I should be able to do this. So I don't want to reach out and be like, I need some more guidance or that. So, for you to touch base and say, hey, how's it going? Do you have any questions? You've kind of taken that off. You're like, yeah, actually, I'm struggling with this, right? Versus waiting till the next meeting when you're supposed to deliver it. And then that anxiety is building up because you haven't met that deadline, right? Yeah. So you're checking in, you're supporting them along the way. It's that hand holding side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I mentioned, that's the part that they're going to remember.
Yeah. The fact that this company has always been there for me, and I can ask questions at any point. Right. So, when it comes to systems for follow-up, we're huge supporters of Keep. I mean, there's other systems out there. There's a lot of them. But what I enjoy about it is the fact that you've got that automated power to have, onboarding processes to follow up and, post-meeting deliveries. But you can do things with email, with text right there. You can do it on your mobile app. So, let's say I run into either a client or a prospect out while I'm grocery shopping and I have a chat with them and I want to send them a link to book a meeting. I can do that in the parking lot before I even get home and it's not forgotten, right? Or I can, set a task for someone else to follow up with them.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, a lot of people have that perception of automation being, too impersonal. Is that a word?
Impersonal? It is now.
Okay. Impersonal. I said it and I was like, that doesn't sound right.
We make up lots of words in the show.
We really do. Anyway, so impersonal.
Yeah.
But, wording it in a way that, is appropriate and, personal. But with Keep too, if you have that fear of it, not being personal enough, then you can just set a reminder to follow up, because a lot of times the biggest issue isn't necessarily that time, because, it can take less than 5 minutes to follow up with somebody. It's remembering to do it. So, even just setting a reminder, if you aren't currently using some type of software that has that automation aspect, just setting reminders in your phone, set them for a week after you had that conversation or a month after, or whatever it might be, just making sure that you're reminding yourself to follow through with those follow-ups.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the voice side of all the phones, I mean, you've got Siri, you've got Google, you've got all those for your phones. I mean, they'll recognize commands like asking it to remind you to follow up with so-and-so in 3 days, or, next week, or things like that. And it has reminder systems in it where you don't even have to even touch the device. You can just audibly do that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, not remembering or things taking too much time and stuff, they're not excuses anymore because there's technology now that makes it so ridiculously easy and convenient for us.
For sure. And I think the closing off point of this is looking at your business and figuring out all the different elements of it that, you know, you could be following up for. And then figuring out a system that's going to work well with you for that. And it could just be, you know, putting it in a calendar. It could be using your Google or Siri or Alexa or any of those systems for that. Or you could use a CRM system like Keep, right? It's just a matter of getting back to coming up with a system that works for you and sticking with it.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to add on to that, try to take when you're thinking about that and thinking about what system would be best, you have to think about it from your client's perspective. So, you know, what's the average experience with your company at every touch point, and, you know, how can you make that better through following up.
And having systems to be able to text. I mean, if you just want to use it from your phone, great, no problem. But just ask the client, hey, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Right? Some will say email, some will say give me a call, some will say text, right? And just making sure that you're able to follow up by those clients in those different ways.